Welcome back, this is Floral Art Online. I'm Kim Bailey and we're continuing our series on using one bunch or less of supermarket flowers. Today we're going to do the third design in the April 2023 series, and we're going to look at a base that you can continue to use for all sorts of designs, as well as the actual flowers that we're going to use that came from the supermarket in a container that can be interchangeable. So I will be back when I've changed the camera angle to show you what you'll need for this design, and we'll get started. What you'll need for this design, this is a palm spathe that was on the ground in one of the places that we were picnicking, and I thought it would be a useful shape and size. I've had it for a number of years. I've used it in all sorts of different ways. It can be used with the back or with the front, but the beauty of it is that it sits on its own. You just got to work out where the balance is when you've got your flowers in it. It has got a few marks on it. They'll be covered up with the foliage that we use. So what else we've got to use for this design apart from the spathe? Some large broadleaf foliage. These are gymea leaves, an Australian native, that have been cut down so that I can use them in the design. They last quite a deal of time. These were actually cut probably 3.5 weeks ago. They have been sitting in water, just the base of the stem in water. They're over 5 foot tall, the actual leaf itself. So I trimmed these off yesterday, so they're starting to brown a little bit because they've been out of water since then. But if you had them in water and then put them in your design, you're probably looking at about 10 days before they'll start to discolour too much. The other leaf you can use in that sense without needing it to be in the water is aspidistra, a really useful pliable leaf. You could use flax leaves, they'll gradually dry into something, but anything that enhances your design. You might even like to use, when you get to autumn or fall, the changing colours of leaves to enhance your design. So you'll need that foliage, you'll need an elastic band, and you'll need a container with some water in. Now, I've shown you this technique before. This is just basically a little plastic container. It's got the water in it already, so I'm going to have to be careful how I tip it towards the camera. But we've made a grid with tape. I used the green pot tape just so that you could see it more easily. But you can use sticky tape or any sort of tape. Tape it into a grid pattern, and that's where we're going to put the placements, and that's what will hold it in place without having to use foam or anything else in the design. So, first of all, what we want to do is make sure that this container is not visible in the design. So we're going to use one of the leaves to actually cover the outside of this container and hold it in place with the elastic band. You could use to cover the elastic band. I quite like the look of the elastic band, but if you didn't like that, you could use the elastic band certainly to hold it in place and then cover that up with some raffia or some ribbon or some other decorative feature, or string or twine. I was trying to think of what else you could use. There was natural products, just to enhance your design, but to cover up the actual, this is what's called a mechanic, to hold it in place. So we'll get that one out of the way. And we'll cut ourselves a little bit. Now I'm going to cut, this leaf has a very thick spine in it, and I want to use that part of it for another part of the design. So I'm going to cut from the top where it's a little bit more pliable. So just measure how much I need with a bit of an overlap. Trim that off. We do of course have the supermarket flowers, which I think I have omitted to mention, but we'll get to those in a second. So we'll cover this first of all. Just basically a matter of doing this and putting your elastic band around to hold it in place. And there we have our water source is covered. You could probably use 2 elastic bands just to keep the back section of it, which is facing me, a little bit neater. I have left it uneven on purpose because we're going to have smaller, lower placements of flowers here and higher ones here. So let's do that now with our flowers that we got from the supermarket. So we have the famous chrysanthemums the $8 bunch, as you can see. And we have, let me see, we've got four, there's actually 4 stems, but you can see how many flowers we've got in that particular single bunch of flowers. So if I face it out to you, because this is the way it'll be out facing, and we will start to trim some of these off. So as you would have seen, I have cut them into some that are multi-flower single stem and some that are just the single stems. I'm just taking off the foliage so none of it has any chance of being in the water that we've got in our container. And you can see just how many we got out of those 4 stems, all of these individual flowers. So it's a good thing to practice being able to use individual stems rather than just the bunch that you buy from the supermarket. So let's start. First of all, we want a placement, because as I said, we've got this different height here. We want a bit of a placement that'll go at the back. We'll just trim off some of these petals that are looking a bit tired, been in the container for too long. And we'll find a spot in our grid where that will sit nice and comfortably. How easy is that? And then we just need to fill out, we'll put a couple of the low ones in. Remember, we've talked in the past about being up and down in a design, in and out, so that there's interest all around. Not all at the same height, not all out facing, but some tucked in underneath, so that you have to actually have a look around to see what's really in there. So we'll put some of these lower ones in, making a mess here on the table. I've just got 3 buds there, and we're going to put them into one of the holes in the grid. And they will obviously tuck down a little bit lower and behind that particular flower. So we want something that comes up a little bit higher, sort of in between this placement and this placement. And we'll have it going out to the side. Now I might have to turn this around so I can see, because it's very difficult for me to do it backwards, I'm finding. I'd like to be able to, and there's some very good designers out there who seem to be able to do it on stage even, without having to actually see what they're producing, or maybe they just trust their instincts. Now see how those two are the same height. So what I want to do, because of the grid, I can actually choose another one and have it so that it covers up that space that was there, and it makes us look down into where those little buds are. We might put one more bud in there to make it interesting. There we go. Now I am going to turn it around so I can see. I'm not going to use the rest of these multi-stemmed ones in this particular design, so I'll put them back in the vase, in the water I should say, and we'll use them in the next design. See, once again, you can see how easy it is to be able to not have to use a whole bunch to create something that's interesting and alive. So I'll just very quickly do these placements. You can talk amongst yourselves. But what I'm doing with each of these placements is I'm finding a square in that grid that we made where I can put a placement. So it's going to stay in place. And the beauty of it is that the grid is that if you don't like where it is or it's not sitting the way you want it to, you can lift it out and move it. Makes it so much more versatile than any other way that you might have your plant material. So there we have all of our flowers placed from the bunch, the ones that we're going to use. We've still got, looks like there's 4 flowers left there that we can use in some other design. Now that on its own is probably quite attractive and would work in certain placements, but let's have a look at what we can do with the palm spathe and the rest of the foliage, the rest of the gymea leaves, while I surreptitiously tidy up the table here. Let's look at the palm spathe first of all. Remember I said about getting it to balance and sit in a place, so now we've got the flowers done. That's the bulk of the weight. So I just want to show you a few things. We could place it, she said, getting out of the way. We could place it in the centre. Doesn't really enhance either the flowers or it just looks like it's been plonked down in the centre. So what we want to do is move it a little bit off centre, making sure we've still got the balance of the leaf. Now we could do it that way, but we get the angle. We can do it this way. We can push it back a bit. And I think pushing it back gives us a better angle to appreciate both the palm spathe and the flowers. Then we need to ease in the foliage, the greenery, to break up this very heavy spathe a little bit. So we can do it simply by placing them in. Once again, we've got to watch the balance. But because we've got this split here, we can actually utilise that to help us in the placement of the material and have it so that it really does create some interest. We bring this through. There's actually another split in the leaf there that I could push this one through and have it join at the back, but I might leave it at that for now. I'll just spin it around so I can have a look at it and make sure it's where I want it to be. I just might turn those to face the line that we're creating with the gymea leaves. And let's see if we can attach that there a little bit. It's got some very convenient splits in it, this palm spathe, so I do tend to utilise them all wherever I can. So I know I've stepped off screen a little bit, but what I'm doing is threading it through the palm spathe, if it will go, to give me a little bit more movement in the design. No, it won't. It's not playing with me today. So we'll see if we can just hook it up there. So there we have our design. Basically today it was to show you how to use that grid and how you can utilize that in a placement anywhere at all. So whatever you've got around the garden or the house where you might like to add flowers to it without destroying a particular container or a piece of art or pottery or something else that you've got, use the container inside whatever else you've got, and then there you will have something that is your particular work of art presented as a flower arrangement using less than one bunch of supermarket flowers. I'm Kim Bailey and this is Floral Art Online, the supermarket series.